My name is George Palermo. I served in the United States Marine Corps from 1966 to 1972. I served in the Republic of Vietnam from August of 1968 to September of 1969. I was trained as a jet engine mechanic. I served most of my time in the Marine Corps as a crew chief on F-4 Phantom jets. I was what is now referred to as the non-combatant. We used to refer to them as REMAFs. That stood for Rear Echelon. I won't finish it. I was like a lot of your sons and daughters in a non-combat role, and yet I had some situations and issues that I got into in Vietnam that literally scarred me for the rest of my life. Once I started working through those issues, came to the realization what the problem was, I was able to heal from them and move forward. I'm part of a group known as Point Man Antelope Valley. We're an affiliate of Point Man International Ministries out of Springbrook, New York. We are also a ministry of Journey Church here in the Antelope Valley. Point Man is a Christian organization. We believe that the only true healing can come from the blood of Jesus Christ. But we're not here to beat the veterans up with the Bible. We're here to support them and provide counsel for them. Every time we start a meeting, we let the new veterans know who we are, what we plan on doing, and that any counsel that we do give them comes from our understanding of the Bible. And our desire is to help them heal. The reason I've agreed to do this is because I've suffered with my issues for almost 40 years. There's no reason for your sons and daughters to have to go through that. There is help. There is understanding. We'll get into more of the details of it once we start our formal talk, but I'll let Jerry introduce himself.
My name is Jerry Rice, not the famous football player. I'm the famous marriage and family therapist, and I spell it different. I was Jerry Rice first, by the way, so there should be some legal something I could do about that. But I was drafted. I was invited to serve in the Army by the President of the United States. And I remember that day very well. I came home from work working for the gas company. My wife was standing at the front door holding a letter. It was the letter, greetings from the President. Drafted in '68, served in Vietnam from August of '69 to August '70. I was a scout dog handler. After getting myself thrown out of NCO school, they made a scout dog handler out of me, which involved walking point with a German Shepherd. Walking point is not the best job in the military, but doing it with a German Shepherd was a little bit better. Well, it was a lot better. Dog was trained to find mines, booby traps, what they call IEDs now, snipers, and things like that. A lot of stress involved in that job. I was assigned to the 4th Division, but immediately upon arriving with the 4th Division up in I Corps, they sent me down to the southern part of Vietnam to be with the 101st Airborne, 3rd of the 506 Recon, working with them. And when they left Phan Thiet, I worked with the 1st of the 50th Mechanized Unit, moving around on armor personnel carriers, aluminum armor, by the way, which turned out to be a bad idea, which we would all kind of think. But I, like George, have dealt with my issues for 30-some years, and as recently as 1999, I was out of my home. I was away from my family. I was ready to call it quits on everybody and everything, and ran into George at the Moving Wall in 2002. And met several of the guys that are here in the back row.
Up against the wall.
Up against the wall, yeah. And was able to come to terms with some of my problems because I found somebody that understood. One veteran put it very aptly, said the sweetest words I've ever heard were not "I love you," but rather "I understand." And these guys got it. And they understood where I was coming from like nobody else. Not my wife, not the rest of my family. But of course I was an isolating type, and I'll talk about that later. So I never was able to latch on to the help that I could get from another veteran that understood. I was in it all by myself, you know, trying to make it work. And the wheels came off, like I said, in about 1999. And through the grace of God and through the help of Point Man, I was able to get things back together with my wife and my family, and we're doing really well now. So that's who I am. Thank you very much.
To start with, the first part of this is going to be kind of dry. It's kind of a textbook type stuff, but I think it's important for you all to understand what we're talking about and the issues that need to be dealt with. I want to thank Alyssa and the Blue Star Mothers for inviting us here. The Point Man group is, as Jerry said, in the back wall. That's the veterans spot. Veterans will only stay against the back wall on the aisle, if possible. Anyway, I believe it's the responsibility of the veteran community to educate and assist our new veterans and to educate their loved ones about the reality of war and its effect on the individual. This country can no longer afford to ignore our returning veterans and expect them to have a good life. We can clearly see from the way the Korean and Vietnam veterans were welcomed home that something's wrong with our process. I believe we need to educate the public as well as the veterans about post-traumatic stress and its effect. We also have to understand that suicide is a reality. And for us to think that my son or my daughter isn't going to do that is not good enough. We need to have the tools to help them work through the issues that might bring them to that point. Statistics say that for every veteran's war experience has significant influence on the people that they touch. A minimum of at least 5 people will be impacted by what happened to a veteran during his time of war. I'm going to kind of give you an overview of post-traumatic stress and what it means, and then we'll get into the triggers and what they look like, because you can very easily read a statistical chart that tells you hyper-alertness, hyper-arousal, and go, okay, great, what does that mean? What does that look like in a vet? And that's some of the things we'll talk about. Education about war-related stress, first for the veteran, and then for others in his sphere of influence, is a good starting point. But it's not sufficient just to convey to the veteran what it is, but to give them tools. Okay. But to also give them tools by which they can manage their symptoms, manage post-traumatic stress. Now, clinically, post-traumatic stress, or PTS, is known as post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't like to use the word disorder because disorder indicates that there's something wrong with the veteran. Post-traumatic stress is a normal response to an abnormal set of circumstances, and war being the most abnormal. Understanding what perpetuates the troubles stemming from PTSD works kind of like this. Imagine you own a car, but you're not too mechanically inclined, like me. One day, you're driving down the road, the car stalls in the middle of the intersection, you pull off to the side of the road, you open up the hood, because somebody told you that when the engine dies, that's where you should look. Well, you open up the hood and you look in and you kind of stare dumbfounded at all this stuff underneath there. And you don't even know where to begin checking what's wrong, what to do. How a veteran deals with their war experience and the aftermath is much like that. Few veterans are clinicians. They haven't studied or treated people with emotional problems. Instead, they begin to kind of short circuit in certain areas of their lives. They become anxious, depressed, seemingly out of control. Then someone says to them, look under the hood. And for the first time in their lives, they'll admit to themselves that there may be some issues from their war experience that they need to deal with. So they lift the hood. That is, they begin reading about post-traumatic stress, the after effects of war, and suddenly they're confronted with this gigantic thing called post-traumatic stress. They have absolutely no idea where to begin and how to deal with it. They'll read the VA pamphlets and some of the literature that we have that list all of these symptoms of post-traumatic stress, and pretty soon they go, I got all of them. What do I do with this stuff? In order to prevent being buried in all the psychological rhetoric, those who have no clinical knowledge of what they're dealing with need to start at a kind of a blue-collar level. What is it, and what do I do about it? And that's what we're attempting to help educate you about here today. So let's go back to the under the hood analogy. You're standing there, you're scratching your head, trying to figure out what the heck am I supposed to be looking at. And a friend comes strolling along, and he happens to be a little bit more mechanically inclined than you are. And he goes, hey, you know, when you're looking under the hood, there's certain things that you need to check for to make sure what's happening. You know, is there gas in the car? Is the electrical system working right? Is it getting juice? Giving you some ideas of what to look for. In the same way, the veteran needs to begin to view PTSD through those kind of eyes. Narrow down this mass of symptoms that that the VA lists for them, and then take one of those symptoms at a time, one that they can relate to, and find out as much about it as they can. Some of these symptoms won't mean anything to the veteran until they start dealing with it. But the ones that they can relate to, they need to relate to. War-related stress covers an expansive area in a veteran's life. Just as they looked under the hood and their knowledgeable friend came along and advised them of the few basic things that they needed to check out, they must examine the basic symptoms of PTS and then try and work on them and improve their situation with them. How did they recognize the problem? Speaking from a warrior's perspective, war affects our lives like no other phenomenon. Experiencing it generates a sense of anxiety and fear that can destroy our peace of mind and break our ability to concentrate. It is not uncommon to have our thoughts intruded upon by memories and flashbacks. Post-traumatic stress may continually cause small problems to become huge issues on a daily basis. In short, war creates a tremendous amount of stress on everyone involved. If this stress goes unrecognized and unmanaged, it can severely damage a person's mental and physical health. It can build to a point that makes it impossible to mentally cope with everyday problems or to resist stress-related physical illnesses such as high blood pressure, ulcers, and heart disease. If you recognize and handle stress properly, however, it can be shaped into something healthy and even useful in getting you through the challenges of each day and the traumas of war. So what is stress. Critical incident stress, CIS, is a negative stress that a person first encounters when trauma happens. Left unaddressed and unmanaged, over time it evolves into post-traumatic stress. PTS does not disappear with time. It does not evaporate on its own. Left alone and stuffed inside, it only makes the symptoms more severe. Stress is a unique and personal response from our bodies and minds to meet the demands of different situations. We usually react to future stressful circumstances with an instinctive fight or flight response, neither of which is conducive to maintaining a proper social schedule. If you immediately are ready to kill somebody or you're immediately ready to bolt from the situation, people kind of look at you like you're a little bit weird. And that's one of the primary reasons some vets will isolate away from others or be kind of flighty. And sadly, it's the reason that many vets are in trouble with the law for physical crimes like abuse and assault. This fight or flight response is a survival mechanism built into man from his creation. This survival response increases blood flow to the muscles, our heart rate goes up, our respiration goes up, the blood pressure goes up, and when this response kicks in, our mental alertness is heightened, and we focus our attention and intellect on the matters at hand. So whatever's in front of you at that moment is the most important thing. You add to that the fact that we as veterans were trained to kill people, and we spent a year or 7 months or 15 months doing that. Our reactions are not going to get welcomed response from the general populace. Originally, this reaction helped people to prepare for a physical conflict or an escape from one. Now they usually serve to direct our mental and physical resources to a particularly difficult and trying situation. And the results are often positive. But sometimes, though, these situations last longer than our ability to cope with them, such as months or years in a combat zone. When this happens, we experience feelings of distress, of negative stress, and this negative stress, left unmanaged, puts us in risk for health problems, personal conflicts, poor job performance, even domestic violence. So how do I manage stress? And that's some of the issues that we'll be continuing to talk about. But a couple of short bullet points are what we stress in Point Man. Talk it out. You're not alone. There's others that understand what you're dealing with, what you're going through. Depending on your family background, you can talk to your family, talk to your friends, because they are experiencing some of the same anxieties and frustrations that you're experiencing. Find a veteran buddy or a group. That's probably the best, because the identity thing. I know he's been there, done that. I can relate to him better than I can to my mom or to my wife. Physical activities. You know, release the tension of stress through physical activity, going for walks, doing some exercise, playing tennis, working in the garden. Those types of things will relieve some of the stress. Know your limits and make time for relaxation. How do you do that? Yeah. If you're watching the news or a war movie and it bothers you, don't do it.
Turn it off.
Turn the television off. Some exercise or even talking about war-related situations can actually send you into an episode where the anxiety increases. If that happens, stop talking about it. Back away. Know what your limits are and walk away from them. The Bible has a great proverb that tells you to run from these things, and that's what you need to do. You need to get away from things that you know trigger you into an episode of anxiety or stress or whatever. It's important to remember that events in the past are beyond your control. Try to reduce the amount of time you spend worrying about things you can't change. A good way to do this is to cut down or eliminate activities that cause you stress. There is a wide gap between what we remember having happened and what actually happened. There's a huge gap between those. Normally, there is very little we can do to change the outcome of an event that is causing us struggles. I'll share a little personal thing. I hope I can. While I was in Vietnam, I went through a situation where one of our aircraft crashed in the South China Sea, and I was sent on the detail to recover the aircraft. And when we went, we approached the crash site, and there was a group of Vietnamese surrounding what we assumed was our crash site. And so we immediately locked and loaded and moved on them to get them away from the crash site so that they wouldn't take any of the damage. And as they parted to let us through, they were standing over the bodies of a 12 and a 14-year-old girl that our aircraft had hit. And my first job was to pick up the bodies and return them to their parents. And then I spent 12 days on that beach guarding that aircraft. And for years, my wife would ask me to take her to the beach, or my daughter would ask me to take her to the beach. And we would get to the point of almost divorce before I would say, I'm not going to the beach, and they would have to go by themselves. And I never related the two incidents until 20 years later. I still have problems going to the beach, but now I can process through that, and I can talk about, this is 2007. I'm in Santa Monica, not in Vietnam. I've got to work through that. And my wife understands now, and so she watches me. And she can tell when I'm starting to go into an episode, and she can draw me back and talk to me about, wait a minute, you're in Santa Monica, you're not in Vietnam. There's no dead children here. There's those whole issues. So it's important to remember, and for years, I'll admit, I blamed myself for the death of those two little girls. And the reality is, I had nothing to do with it. There's nothing I could have done that would have changed the outcome of that, but that was immaterial to me for 20 years. It was my fault those two little girls were dead. Another step is to take control. Step out of yourself. Go help somebody else. Participate in a stand down. Go help hand out information on the Blue Star Mothers. Whatever. Just get out of yourself. Help others. And by doing that, that dissipates your focusing on your issues and thinking about yourself. The big one, avoid self-medication. Drugs and alcohol may seem to remove the stress temporarily, but it's there, and all it's going to do is make things worse. Even caffeine and nicotine can affect your stress level and your emotional response to things. As I've said a couple of times, our desire tonight is to help educate you, not just on PTS, but what it looks like. What, if anything, you can do to help your veteran identify and deal with their issues. Whatever you learn tonight should only be applied when your veteran is ready to deal with it. If they're not ready to deal with it, it's going to cause you a lot of grief, and it's going to cause them to pull back. I get calls often from mothers and wives of veterans saying, my husband, son, whatever, is having some real issues. Can you help him? And I'll say, yes, I can, as soon as they call me. Because if I go after them, they're going to back away and they're not going to want to talk to me. You also need to know that we are talking from our own experiences. Your veteran may need professional help. And these suggestions that we'll give you tonight are not meant to replace the guidance of a qualified professional. The reality of the effects of combat-related stress is that it changes the person forever. No matter how much we care, no matter how much the veteran applies the keys for managing stress, the memories and the effect of their war experience will be with them for the rest of their lives. They cannot just forget it. They cannot get over it. It's not going to happen. They can only learn how to manage it. And so for the remainder of the time tonight, Jerry's going to take over, talk about these stressors and what they look like, why this happens. And it's an interactive session. You got questions, pop your hand up. You got input, let us hear it. We want to be able to impart to you things that are going to help you. So if we're not answering specific questions, over on the table are just a myriad of information. There's one there. Its heading is downrange, and it's the list of PTS symptoms out of the downrange book. That's going to kind of be our jumping off spot for talking through these things. But there's a lot of other information on post-traumatic stress. I've got downrange books. I wish I could give every one of you one of them, but I can't because I can't afford it. So the downrange books are there. They're $10. And anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Jerry.
I'd like to begin by saying that it's been noted in PTSD. I'm a clinician, by the way. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I realized that my life was so screwed up that I thought I'd go to grad school to get it straightened out. And I'm recently licensed. Boy, what an arduous task that was. But what I want to do with that is to make myself available as a veteran to talk to veterans. And so this stuff is really, really pretty close to home to me. George is saying in the downrange book that was co-authored by Bridget Cantrell and Chuck Dean, it's a book about returning from Iraq and the war, after the war, if you will. And he deals with some of the post-traumatic stress responses. And so they show up on this list, not like they do in the DSM-IV, which is a Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Psychiatric Disorders, but he talks about them and he lists them here in ways that we can really understand them. And by the way, if we don't understand what's going on, what good is it? I mean, to see a term like hyperarousal and we don't know what that means, just talk to a veteran that's got it, and he'll square you away real quick. Light some firecrackers off at about 5 a.m. and you'll find out what hyperarousal is, what hypervigilance is, and what exaggerated startle response is. And so I want to talk with you a little bit about this list. He begins by talking about depression, and I think that's that sense of unhappiness, that sense of not finding pleasure in previously enjoyed activities. When we see someone that's depressed, they usually have sleep disturbances, appetite problems. Dragging themselves into the shower in the morning is the major task of the day. Getting out of bed to use the bathroom is a difficult task as well. So there are those kind of depressed mood problems that that attend a person who's experienced combat trauma. Here's one that was really kind of surprising to me. It's called Cynicism and Distrust of Government and Authority. Now, where would that ever come from, you know? What do you know? They become very cynical and very distrusting. These people have been worked over. Oh, by the way, you're headed home, and oh, by the way, you're headed back. The Arctic warriors were flying home, the Alaska National Guard, and their plane was turned around and sent back. I mean, yeah, that is brutal. So there's a tendency to distrust government, and this translates to anyone in authority. If you're holding the keys, if you're the person in charge, then you're suspect, and they'll let you know about that. One of the hardest tasks I had was getting a driver's license. I was having difficulty with the guy with the badge behind the counter asking me what I was doing there, and I said, well, I'm trying to get a driver's license, as a matter of fact, and well, what are you standing in this line for? And it was almost more than I could take. Just feeling like there was a sense of I was doing something wrong, and I was rising to that with the next one, which is anger. It's an emotion that guys are okay to share. It's okay to be clinically angry. If we were to look at anger or our emotions, anger would be the tip of the iceberg, and feelings of betrayal, feelings of anxiety, feelings of fear, they would be all the underwater part of that iceberg. But we can show anger, and it's okay, and it helps us.
Well, and
Keeps people at arm's length.
yeah, and the flag that's on top of that iceberg, where the top's anger, is rage.
Yeah.
And for years, that's how I controlled my environment.
Yeah.
I could get angry enough to get anybody I didn't want around me to back off. And if they didn't, I would go to rage. And that would definitely push them away. And once you do that a couple of times to what we like to refer to you as the civilians, they don't want to have anything to do with you.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, the train's overtaking us.
Yeah. Alienation is another one. Feeling the first part of that word, alien. They feel like they're from another planet, or like you're from another planet. They'll come home. Let's say they're a 19-year-old. One of the most exciting things that happened to them was playing varsity football, and they come back and they're talking with some of their friends about the glory days in high school, and there's that kind of disconnect. It's like, that's not important anymore. That doesn't matter. They don't get it, and it's hard to breach that ground between those who. Well, what was it like over there? Well, it was kind of hot, and it was kind of sandy, and then it kind of drops off from there, because it's hard to explain when you have that compressive experience, the traumatic experiences, having seen things that other people just don't understand. My wife would talk to me when I would be off in my own world and ask me what I was thinking about, and I would just say, oh, nothing. You don't want to know what I'm thinking about. It's just, it's too gross, and it'd be bizarre to tell you how that even connects to the situation of looking at paint at Home Depot, So feeling alien, feeling disconnected from their friends, their comrades, their old buddies. They've got another brotherhood now that really get it. And it's hard to connect with other people that don't. But you're here today trying to get it. And that is cool. There wasn't PTSD until about 1980-something. So we were just nervous back in the Vietnam era until about 1985. And here I have a little Valium, yeah. Yeah, there you go. There you go. So with that alienation comes a tendency to isolate. So they back off from their friends. They have, a combat veteran. My war, the Vietnam War, you ask how many of them have any friends. Well, who would they call if something heavy fell on them? And they don't know. So don't try moving the refrigerator by yourself unless you've really connected with someone. So they see it as a point of safety to isolate. And it's because they can't relate. Another difficulty is sleep disturbances. And I'd say it's usually insomnia. I know veterans will sleep about 2 or 3 hours a night, with one eye open, It's very difficult. It's very difficult to sleep. Nighttime can be a very challenging time. It's a time when the enemy might move in on you. So sleep disturbances. So they'll be walking around at all hours of the night, and it's something that you can get ready for. Poor concentration. We used to call it the 1,000-yard stare. They're off in another world. And sometimes that poor concentration comes from just being plain preoccupied with thoughts of comrades left behind and those that will never return, trying to make sense of a world that doesn't understand the things that made them good. How many of you saw the guy that walked into the building with a squad of men, and he had the embedded cameraman with him, and the guy said, "Oh, there's one that's alive," and he shot the guy. And
oh yeah,
and he says, "He's not now." Well, the whole news media went, "Oh my goodness, he actually shot somebody. Did you see that?" Like, what did they think was going on there? You know what I mean? And every vet that I talked to, we all voted, and we said, "Yeah, we want that guy on our team." There was no hesitation, not a blink of the eye. He just went, bingo. He's not anymore. It wasn't like, let's philosophize about the value of life. Maybe this guy's going to cure cancer. Maybe I should talk to him. There was none of that. It was just like that. And that makes him good. And then it made him bad. And then it made him good again when they decided that it was okay. But there's that, there's that preoccupation with how they've been trained, how they've been conditioned, and how they've been traumatized. And there's a tendency to react under stress with survival tactics. I shared with you before about dropping a soda in my kitchen. Something like that would just send me into instantaneous anger. And I didn't know what it was for the longest time. And I determined it to be the fact that I was making noise. I was making unwanted noise. I was making a mistake. I was being a ham-fisted jerk. I was, all of those kinds of things. I almost had the Smokey Bear hat bent over in my forehead with somebody yelling at me, telling me how I just got my buddies killed because I dropped that can. It was 2000 and something, and it wasn't Vietnam, but I had to come to terms with it. I had to find out what it was that made me angry. But I would respond to those kind of situations in survival mode. It was as if I had sneezed on ambush or made a mistake in the field, and it wasn't in the field. It was, so I do self-talk now. It says 2007, it was a soda can, and yes, you're getting older, and you've lost your edge. You're just not as good as you used to be. Having to deal with things without going into survival mode, without going into combat mode. Not becoming confrontive when somebody cramps our style, when somebody does something stupid, cuts us off in traffic. I leave church, I'm about ready to be raptured. It's been a wonderful service. Somebody cuts me off in the parking lot, and I'm sent to hell about 8 different ways a Sunday. Got to rededicate my life to Jesus again. And it's just, it's like, we call it 0 to 60 in a nanosecond, because the first guy down is alive. The last guy down is dead. If you're on your knee when you should be laying on the ground, you've caught a bullet. And so we learn to do things quickly. And now I've got people telling me to slow it down. Breathe deeply, in with the good, out with the bad, And I do that. I try to do that. My son stuck a marshmallow on his eye at church camp one time. It was a family camp. We were at McGrath Beach, and I had my job site jug with me, a 10-gallon igloo. It was full of sodas. because it was church, you know. It's loaded up with ice. So he's got this marshmallow in there, and so I jump all over him, you know. He's catching the marshmallow on fire. I said, see, I told you you're going to do that, because that was very important, you know. Burning up marshmallows is an important thing. They're very expensive, you know. So I said, put that thing out. So now he's responding to my orders, right? So he shakes the thing, comes off, sticks right on his eye. So I jumped out of my chair, threw him down on the ground, pulled the lid off the igloo, threw 10 gallons of water on him, soda cans and everything, hit him on the head. He's laying there on the ground. Gasping, and his mother saying, it's okay, your father still loves you, you know. And it's like, he didn't mean to hurt you, he didn't mean to hurt you. And I said, hey, hurt him nothing, he's not even going to get a blister. I was serious, and he didn't. It happened that fast. I'm sitting down, and I've got the pastor, and everybody's looking at me like, we've seen some first aid in our day, but not like that. And he's 36 years old now. He likes to tell that story. Guess where? At church camp. If I got a campfire story, it's every time. Yeah, survival mode. Psychic or emotional numbing, that detached, feeling detached, almost sometimes dissociative. You're not even there. You're off somewhere else. And with your loved one, you'll be asking them what they're thinking about, and sometimes they can tell you, sometimes they can't. There's just a psychic or emotional disconnect. They're just off in another world. Again, with that 1,000-yard stare. There's a negative sense of self or self-image. Sometimes we think about the things that we could have done, the things that we should have done, things that we did make us feel bad, things that we didn't do make us feel bad. Somebody always had it worse than we did. What are we concerned about, you know? Somebody's always done 19 tours to our 18 or whatever it is, you know, and so we have a tendency to minimize and thereby denigrating our own experience, so it affects our self-image. Memory impairment, there's a tendency with PTS to repress certain aspects of the trauma that we've had. We might not remember the things that happened, and that's the brain's way of protecting us from what happened. And sometimes through counseling and therapy, that can be brought out. But go ahead.
Just to share a small example of that, the incident I told you about, the two little girls, for 25 years, I thought there was one girl 14 years old. And in 1998, I was getting ready to go back to Vietnam on a missions trip. And I was going through some of my old letters, and I happened to pick up the letter that I sent home that night. And that's when I found out that there were two little girls that were killed. Didn't help me to know that, but the reality was, for 25 years, I thought there was one little 12-year-old girl that had gotten killed, and you know, that's the way I had played it in my mind.
Right.
So
Right.
It's those types of issues that we imagine what happened as opposed to understand what happened, and that's the benefit of these reunions and things. To get together with another brother that was there and can say, no, wait a minute, that's not what happened, this is what happened. And it's like, oh, wow, yeah, now I understand. So that's the type of issue.
Yeah. Emotional constriction, which would be like suppression, stuffing stuff, pushing stuff down. So, you know, I told my therapist, I said, you know what, this Vietnam thing, it's no deal. I just happened to mention that. If you want to be a therapist, they make you do therapy. And I told them all of my story and all this. And oh, by the way, on my way out the door, I'm a Vietnam veteran. Oh, wait a minute here. Wait a minute. I said, it's no deal. I think I've been holding it all together pretty well. He says, how long have you been feeling like you've been holding it all together? And he was absolutely right. I had it all band-aided and safety wired down in the clinically angry mode. So emotional constriction, stuffing our feelings. There's a hypersensitivity to justice, justice towards the enemy, getting what they deserve. You know that your troop will talk about wiping places out, and they need to get this, they need to do that, and it sounds very lethal. There's kind of that lethal response to things. And there's a sense of it being right and fair. And there's also a sense of hypersensitivity to justice towards the military and how they're treated and how they're processed and how they're cared for, how they're provided for. There's a loss of interest in work and activities, which is part of depression, but it's, there's really a sense of an inability to relate to something pleasurable. You know, it's like, I don't deserve to be having a good time. I don't, you know, there are people that died and, you know, I'm here and I can't really relate to something as frivolous as pleasure. You know, and they might even blow off people that they consider to be shallow and superficial and you know, non-substantive types. You know, if they don't, pleasure is something hard to deal with. So they'll back off from those things that they liked doing before. Problems with intimate relationships. Yeah, it's really difficult. It's too vulnerable and it's too costly. If I become close to someone, they just might die. And so why be close? And so you can insulate yourself, and it doesn't work. It might protect you in combat to be kind of distant. It doesn't work really well in a marriage. You can ask my wife to be that kind of, you know, distant. There's that intimacy costs something, and sometimes that needs to be reestablished. Survivor guilt. This used to be on the list of symptoms. It no longer is. Some psychologists somewhere decided that that one doesn't really matter anymore, and I think it's one that really, really does matter, and I find it kind of interesting. Survivor guilt. It's not on the symptom list anymore. It was eliminated, I think, in the DSM-4, from the 3 to the 4, something like that. But survivor guilt's a big deal. I lived with the fact that a friend of mine was killed with a booby trap that I didn't find, an IED that I didn't find. That was my job. I didn't do it, therefore, my fault. 50 days left in country, and it was really a bad scene. Plagued me for a long time. A brother of mine shared with me that it was like carrying a dead body around with me, and that I needed to get rid of that burden and lay it down and grieve it, and I did. We wonder why others... Go ahead.
You talk about brothers. Do you ever have women that this affects?
Certainly.
I mean, with all this day and age that we have.
Absolutely. I'm sorry for talking in the...
And everything. Do they get affected as the same as men? Because it said that women are stronger than men in a lot of cases. Do they get it as serious as the men do?
Well, particular instance. A mother of 2 out of the Vermont National Guard was ordered to... A truck driver was ordered to run over any children thrown into the path of her vehicle. Yeah, and had to do that. We brake for chipmunks. You know, we roll our car for a jackrabbit. I had to tell my kids, run over the cat, feel sorry, don't get in a wreck. You know? And she was told that when they do that to their children, then you have to respond that way. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a terrible thing. Yes, and she was dealing with the effects of that kind of trauma. How do you come home and hold your own children?
Do you have any that come to your meetings, or any women that have come up, stepped up, and asked for help?
Well, it was in 2005 we did the play A Piece of My Heart at the Palmdale Playhouse, and we had a number of women veterans from the Vietnam, primarily nurses, from the Vietnam War that came and shared some of their insights. But that's... Unfortunately, that's the, you know, if you want to talk about the forgotten warrior, that's the real forgotten warrior, is the women. Yeah. And in fact, Point Man, you know, we started in '84, and we have dealt with male veterans, and we have groups that are known as home fronts that are for the wives and families of the veteran, but it's never incorporated the female veteran. And now we're scrambling because we realize, you know, it's not that before this conflict there weren't women who needed that help. It was just they were never recognized for it. And now we're realizing, and in fact, I've started a dialogue with a couple of women that are in the Air Force at Edwards, asking them to start feeding us information on what we can do to reach out to the women. Because I can relate to them as a combatant to combatant, but there's a whole gamut of female things that I can't relate to.
Absolutely.
And yeah, it is an issue. It's something that needs to be dealt with, but you know, I'm not equipped to do it because I can't relate with, you know,
We
the
have a
motherhood thing.
We have a whole new cohort of women losing their lives. There are 8 women on the wall, the Vietnam Wall, and there are hundreds that have been killed in Iraq, I would say.
150.
150, okay. I thought it was closer to 200.
It's getting up there. It'll keep going.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and we also, so now we have women who have lost their lives as and having comrades see that happen, and we have women taking life now, which is a whole new thing. You know, you're in a non-combat role, but you're riding shotgun in a deuce-and-a-half truck or something like that.
There was a lady from,
Wounded now.
Yeah.
If you got 20,000, so figure 2,000.
well,
Yeah.
and you know, not to sound crass, but the dead don't need care. You know, it's and even the wounded get pretty good care. You know, it's like the military understands that if you got wounded in combat or you got wounded in any kind of situation, you might need some psychological care. But it's the ones that come back that this lady who was, you know, had to run over the kids. You know, they don't consider those things. I had a lady that went to my church, whose daughter went over to Iraq, and she said, oh well, she's just a supply clerk. And I thought, do you know what they do with the supply clerks? And then 3 or 4 months after she had gotten there, the mother came to me and said, oh yeah, well she's taking transporting supplies between Fallujah and someplace else, but she's on a Humvee. And I'm going,
She has no clue.
well, yeah. And I'm going, who is the first person you take out in a convoy? The Humvee with the 50 cal on top of it, you know? And so that aspect is more so in this conflict than in any other, where they're taking Air Force personnel and training them to be grunts. Give me a break, you know? The people that go into the Air Force aren't planning to be a grunt, aren't planning to go on patrols, yet they're having them do it. So it's a whole different ballgame, and yeah, the female veteran is an area that really needs a lot of work.
Absolutely.
Mike?
Do they know what a grunt is?
Oh.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Boots on the ground?
Yeah, well, that guy back there in the gray sweatshirt, he's infantry.
Infantry, the guys who do the fighting. You know, that always intrigued me, that we were going to win this war from the air. And I went, wait a minute. You want to take control of the city and you're going to win it from the air. Now, without the boots on the ground, you can't take control of anything. So.
Yes.
I was in Special Forces, so we didn't we had teams. We were usually by ourselves. And I'm dealing with this, or I hope I'm dealing with it, which I probably am not. That's my wife. I had to make some decision about children and other things. And my time is very, very, she'll come to me and she says, I'm screaming and tell them, you know, down, down, but I keep asking your clinician, and I keep asking my clinician, why is it that every time I see, pardon me, an Oriental, I don't see the Oriental, I see a potential threat and a potential target. And that's just, that's, there is no, me, if I have to sit there and go 4 miles out of my way, I will. And, okay, so I'm crazy and
No,
I deal with that.
no, rather conditioned. And so then we're talking about reconditioning in order to, and we have to do that. That's what this is about, changing the way that I do things, and that's what this list is about, sharing some of our responses and how can we adjust these responses so that they can fit better, so that we can live well with our traumas as opposed to living poorly with it. We can't un-traumatize ourselves. We can't erase the tape, but we can do something different. We can make some positive change with regard to, like George, who's gone back on trips back to Vietnam, loves the Vietnamese people. When part of our training was to objectify those people as the enemy, they were called all manner of names, none of them friend, and now he has a very close relationship with them, a very deep love, and goes on mission trips to help them. And I think that's a possibility, and that's what we're all about. If I didn't believe people would be able to change, this would be moot. This would be fruitless, but we can change.
What?
Yes?
My son and I going back to Iraq in, 10, 20 years. Could you imagine that happening?
It could be. You could.
I'm not able to say it.
The next thing.
Deal with that.
How do you deal with that?
Yes.
Well,
My clinician is just a little bit.
You
Well-
take it in small bites.
Yeah.
One of the things I talk to the guys in the group about is, what we're defining here are triggers or symptoms of what can trigger
That
us.
is a trigger for me.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
and the idea is, an example, for many years, up till about a couple of years ago, I could not watch Vietnam War movies. I could watch World War II war movies, I could watch Black Hawk Down, I could watch anything in the world, but if it was a Vietnam War movie, forget it. I mean, I went to see Forrest Gump not knowing what was in there.
Yeah, it's a Vietnam movie.
And my wife had me, saw me underneath the chairs because it just freaked me out when the machine gun quit firing. Anyway, so I came to realize that if I watch Vietnam War movies, it's going to cause me to trigger into an episode. So I don't watch Vietnam War movies. I'm starting to now, but that's the issue. I identify these triggers. We've got a paper over there. It's called the trigger evaluation or something like that. And it talks through how you identify the triggers. And the triggers that you can identify, you kind of mark them down and say, okay, this triggers me. What happens when that triggers me? If I hear a Huey 30 miles away and the hair on the back of my neck starts to stand up, I identify that. That's a trigger. The sound of a Huey helicopter triggers me. Okay, how do I feel? What process so I can identify that emotional, the hair standing up on the back of the neck, the tightening of the gut, the getting ready to respond. I can identify those things through known triggers. Then when an unknown trigger, cars backfiring is a trigger for me. I can't control cars backfiring. But because I know the process that I start through when I'm being triggered, I can then talk myself down from going into a full-blown flashback or whatever by knowing those triggers. So you start with the little things that you can master. We talked as we were coming over here. I don't need nobody. I'm my own man. Identifying those things.
Thanks, George.
Well, hey, talk to those guys that are next to you. They'll tell you the same thing. We're all that way. I don't need nobody. If I get close to this guy, the next firefight, he's dead. What am I going to do? So I'm not going to get close to him. I don't need any help from him. And so you identify those things in small bites and start working on them. Are you going to do it the first time out? Nope. Are you going to do it the 100th time out? Nope. But as you start to work on it, it starts to build that resistance. It starts to build that that shield, if you will, around you that you don't need your wife to tell you, hey, you're going down that street, because you know it and you can identify it. And I'm not saying don't share that with, if I were talking to you as groups of veterans, I tell you, tell your wife about it, tell your kids about it, get them to understand, have them read downrange. Well, no, I'm not talking about going into the gory details. I'm talking about helping them understand what it is that you went through. Downrange, or some of this literature that we have about what post-traumatic stress is, how it affects the veteran.
Did you hear what you just said?
Coming, no, I didn't.
Well, he just said to me, he said, I don't understand. I said, well, you're closed up. You won't let anybody in. You're in the house all day. You're in your own world. You won't let them do it. In fact, today he says somebody comes through that door, they better have a shotgun. I mean, there you go. And I'm with him. And I mean, I'm helpless. What can I do?
Well, at some point,
I mean, there's so much
at some point, the onus is on the veteran.
Oh, yeah. And
If a veteran is physically abusive to wife, family, whatever, they need to be separated from that situation.
And I've been with him ever since he was diagnosed with this. This was in 1983 from the VA. And all the doctors could say is, I got to go for help. I got to start taking pills.
If you are living with a person who has post-traumatic stress, you will have. I've got a 21-year-old daughter who's going to college, and she exhibits all of the signs of post-traumatic stress. I mean, you can go through the list. She has anger problems. She has, intimacy problems. All of those things, because she lived with me for 18 of her 21 years.
How are you doing with that? How are the two of you doing with that on a broad basis?
We've grown quite a bit, and in fact, in 2005, she came back to Vietnam with me, and so our relationship is healing. But that's a reality. If you're living with a post-traumatic stress person, you're going to get it. You're going to have that secondary diagnosis, and the reality is, you can't do anything for your veteran, but you can do stuff for yourself. And that's what you need to do. You need to help yourself.
All they keep saying is, get away, divorce.
No, I'm not talking divorce.
No, that's not, they do, but we know that's not an answer. Running away is not an answer.
But again, if there is physical violence going on, then there has to be a physical separation. There can't, that is totally it's not an option. But I'm not talking divorce. My wife and I went down that path, and we were seeing a counselor, and the counselor finally got to the point where it said, the only thing left is you guys to get a divorce, and we left that counselor and went to a different counselor.
But he goes to the doctor, and the same one, and the same one is saying, this is for over 20 years, and the doctor is still saying the same thing.
After 20 years, I think you're kind of in a stuck place, I'd say. And you need to move on.
And I've said to him, you've got to move on. We've got to
Well,
move on.
he's going to start coming to Point Man, and we'll see if we can't get him moving
Good.
on.
Good.
Because the responsibility is his. It's not yours. It's his responsibility. And he is responsible for what he does and what he says. Yeah, I understand, we've all got these issues from Vietnam, but we all have to own those issues from Vietnam.
But
Yes.
I accept responsibility.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I understand when they first come back from Iraq, the symptoms seem to be really acute at that point. It's really, really bad. They taper off a little bit, but I mean, how much do you expect that they?
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's like when my son first came back, it was horrible. It was horrible for him. He couldn't even. He was freaking out because cars were driving.
Oh, yeah? Why not?
And they weren't parting for him. And he was going around acting like he was carrying his gun, and he had nothing. But in his mind, he was carrying his gun, and he kept ducking around and all this stuff. It was really, really bad.
Yeah.
So, and he got slowly better, but, I mean, at what point, you know, does it stop getting
Well,
better?
I still jump when cars backfire, but I'm not on the ground anymore. But when I was walking under an overpass in West LA, and I had my jungle boots on, and because they felt comfortable, I went back to work for the gas company. I was working in the street putting in pipes, you know, because that was the kind of job that I liked to do, because it was kind of like the military. You could hang out with a bunch of guys and work hard and party hard, you know what I mean? So this guy turns off his ignition, turns it back on, loads up that exhaust system with raw gas. Kaboom! And I was on the ground, and my buddy kept walking, and he turned around, and I could see the guy's face in the mirror, and he was laughing. He had got me, and but I almost had a heart attack. But I was just like months back. So I did respond that way, and I still jump at certain things. When something catches my eye, but I'm not as, I'm a lot better. This has been 39 years though, so if that tells you anything. But I hadn't started working on it till like I said, like 1999.
When do you start working on it? When do I know that he's open? For instance, I'll give you an example. He lost two very close friends, one of which he went through boot camp with.
Wow.
And he was only 18 and already had a son. And my son took it really hard. I didn't know he had gone through boot camp with this young man. Anyways, he didn't want to talk about it, so it was like, okay, I didn't talk to him about it. He had a trigger the day that he came home, which was somebody had given him a folded up flag. And that triggered, it was just, it wasn't supposed to mean anything, but to him it meant his dead friend.
That's right.
So anyways, after he'd been home for about a week, he brings me his picture of boot camp graduation, and his friend is circled on there, and it says KIA and the date that he was killed.
Yeah.
And he just hands it to me and walks away.
Yeah.
Does this mean he wants to talk
Great
about
communication skills, yeah.
Does this mean just, I want you to know?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah. See,
but I don't want
that's
to talk about
that's.
it because I'm turning
See, you're getting
away.
it. See, you're getting it. It's like, well, what's in this picture? You got to do some interpretive stuff here. See, you're learning how to do that. He hands you a picture. It's got somebody's face circled. It says KIA. Yeah. Yeah. Let me hold that up to my forehead here. Yeah. He's trying to tell me something.
Was, does he want to talk about it or does he not?
Yeah.
You can do
And
something.
So I left it alone. Really afraid to hit him too soon.
That's right.
With wanting to talk about it, but when do you know? How do you know when?
You know what? What if you talked like that? You know, I don't know what that means, and I know it must have really hurt you, and I'm sorry that you lost someone that you're so close to, and maybe we can talk sometime.
When
you
you're
know,
ready.
When you're ready.
When you're ready, we can talk.
That's it.
I understand.
And wow, I had that same kind of feeling. I was watching them work a fire off of Goatee Hill. I live on 50th West. My backyard kind of looks, and they were fighting this fire, and there's fixed wing dropping stuff on this hill, and I'm starting to get twitchy here. I'm kind of, what's going on here? A helicopter comes, picks up the water, and so there's dust flying, you know, like it would be on a landing zone. And this wasn't combat, but there's planes swooping down. There were the sounds. There was a hill on fire. I've seen a lot of that, a lot of hills on fire, napalm and that. And so I went. My wife was doing her hair, and I said, you know what? I was watching them work this fire on Goatee Hill, and it kind of freaked me out and gave me some kind of feelings of anxiety. And that was one of the first things that I ever told her about. Instead of thinking, if I go tell her this and she's going to ask that, then I'm going to say this, and she's going to get mad, and then I'm going to tell her, well, forget it, and you know. And I didn't do that, but I didn't have to go to blood and guts dead guys. I just, you know, I've been able to say things like, I'm thinking about lost comrades right now. So I've helped her, and then she in turn, she's able to help me, and she understands. She asks me where I want to sit in the restaurant now. You know, what table do you want?
It seems like, and I don't know if other mothers are experiencing this. I think I've heard a couple of them talk about it. It seems like they have an easier time talking about the really blood, guts, gory stuff
Yeah.
than
than the
Some
feelings.
stuff that is very shocking, and I keep as straight a face as I possibly can.
Yeah. That's
Thank
good.
God I'm married to a police officer, so I'm used to
Yeah.
that kind of communication. But, I mean, he seems to have a really easy time talking about, you know, the dead Iraqis and the body parts and things like this, more so than he does about the things that were close to him.
Yeah.
Losing his
Yeah, that's
friend.
that's
The
impersonal.
little girl that he
Yeah.
had to
Yeah.
help that fell from a 3-story building, and he was responsible for
Oh.
getting, and it was a big news
Oh,
story.
wow.
He was involved in that. This little girl was actually saved by the Marines. He was involved in that, but, you know, it was hard for him to see this little girl all busted up, and I know it. He's told me a little bit about it, but, you know, but he's really easy on the stuff about what was blown up and who was blown up, and
Take pictures of it.
Because-
Maybe on their cell
he
phone.
has pictures. He
You know,
has things
pretty gross stuff.
that he had one of those computer jump drives with some videos on it. I don't know where these videos came from. Some of them are just horrific. I started watching them and I didn't know what it was. And I had to tell my husband, no, you need to watch these and tell me what I can watch and what I can't. There's some really horrific stuff on it that they've taken videos and pictures of.
Because the horrific stuff gets next to the emotions that they're comfortable with, and that is anger, dominance,
Taking care of the bad guy.
lethalism, you know,
Lethal.
the touchy-feely stuff. No, I'm not going to talk about it. you know.
Yeah.
Mike, you had your hand up?
Well, one thing you gotta kind of remember is, you try not to get, how do you say, when you look at all that, or they tell you all that, try not to throw up or you know, let it get to you, because when we talk about things, we know what we went through, and we think those things are funny as heck.
Yeah.
We gave out, you know, during Christmas, you know, we're sitting in a bunker. We gave out hand grenades and big old, you know, ammunition rounds, presents. We just thought it was funny. So when something occurs, I mean, that's the situation we were in. We just made the best out of it. And to you guys, it's frightening as heck. Those, you know, you really did that. Those things really happened, and it was just, we lived with it for a whole year. It was 365 days of pressure, and you had to get through it. So
Absolutely.
There's a handout on the table. It's called A Guide to Talking to a Combat Vet, and it walks you through some of the things that, you know, how you should respond and how you shouldn't. In your case, one of the things I would ask is, when your son stopped talking about it, or stopped reacting, did he talk through the issues and stop, or just stop?
No, it seemed like he just kind of.
Saying that's part of the defense mechanism and shutting down.
But
Mom's not going to understand, so I'm not going to tell her about it.
time that I thought he was doing really well, I made the big mistake. I'm kicking myself. I took him to Disneyland.
Oh, man. Not the happiest place on earth, by the way.
Yeah, that is the worst place to take, and you know, I'm telling that story to everybody. I want everybody to know, do not take your child to Disneyland when they come home from combat. He had a great time, but you leave before the fireworks go off. I mean, thank God I had 2 other of his friends with him, one of which was a Marine, and was able to chase him through the park. And he finally found cover under some ride somewhere where there was no people. And it was absolutely horrifying to, you know, when I finally get to him, see him on the ground, just crying, and, you know, just, he was horrified. Like something, there was bombs going off all around him. What a terrible thing to see at Disneyland.
And unfortunately, that's the reality of what your children are going to come back from. Because the first, I've been married to my wife for 37 years, and the first night I came back from Vietnam, we were just dating at the time, and she came over to my parents' house, and I was sleeping in a bedroom downstairs, and she was sleeping up in my room, and I warned everybody, when you come to wake me up in the morning, be careful. And she'll swear to this day that I was awake. But I was laying on my side asleep, and she came running in the room, jumped up, and as her butt hit the bed, my knee hit her back and slammed her against the wall.
Oh, God.
And to this day, when she has to wake me up, she's across the room. George, you awake? But that's the reality. You're conditioned with that for however long you're there. And that's the reality of what you live with, you know. We got to a place in being a REMAF, we got to a place where, you know, you could tell if you hear the rockets coming in, you don't have to worry about them. If you don't hear them, you don't have to worry about them. And so once you'd been in country for a while, you'd hear the rockets start coming in and the sirens go off, and you'd just kind of roll over in bed and, you know, laugh at the new guys as they ran into the door or, you know, stubbed their toe running to the bunker. But you get kind of complacent with it, but it's something that's with you forever, you know. And I mean, now I will go to 4th of July things and watch fireworks and stuff like that, but it's, you know, for years I had nothing. And there's different color flares that go off meaning different things, and red starbursts are not a friendly thing. And what do you have most of in fireworks shows? Red starbursts. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, that's enemy contact. I don't want to be anywhere near that. You know, so that's the issues that you have to think through as you're trying to deal with your veteran and helping them deal with their issues.
That's on the list of hyper-alertness, hyper-vigilance. Everything is a security problem. I could tell you what was dangerous. My son would say, Dad, if Julia, my 5-year-old granddaughter, if she's going to touch that cactus, let her touch it. It'll prick her finger. And that's better than you throwing the flying tackle on her, her arms flying off, dislocating every bone in her body to save her from that eventuality. You know, because that's how I would be. It would just be like, everything was just like, you know, at Disneyland, I'm like looking at, boy, what a place, man, if I was a terrorist, you know. Yeah. 4th of July at Disneyland, you know, it's weird thinking. But that's how, what can go wrong? There are several people in this room will tell you what can go wrong. And we know about it. And so he was right. He was conditioned. He did exactly the right thing, but in our society it looks strange. I say, why wouldn't he find cover? Why wouldn't he duck? Why wouldn't he be anxious in traffic? That's what keeps him alive. It's when they bring it back home, it's like, man, this doesn't look the same here. And it's really bizarre. So, yeah, take notes. Disneyland, the mall, places with a lot of people where they're bunching up against you, people that don't
Walmart parking lot?
The drive-through where you got a car in front of you and a car behind you, it's like, ooh, that's not good. You park in the parking lot, you get out, you check it out, you know what's going on, you walk in and get your stuff.
No Halloween haunted houses, things jumping out of your...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's,
Larry?
Yeah, George, I'm glad you guys have got this thing going, because I guess it's the first time my wife, as Willie said, I listened to, and everything you guys talking about, I can relate to it. It's happened to me, I did it, or whatever, you know. Just talking about the crowds, the second time I was in country, well, the second day I was in country, I went to Saigon, wait to get out to our troops, and for the Navy, they had a little place where we got in docked in. And they told us not to walk down the street, real crowded street, but we had to go to Chow, a couple of buildings down. They said, don't walk into crowds of two or three or more.
don't bunch up.
Yeah, don't bunch up. And you know, I mean, this record stock New York City in Times Square in the afternoon. Or like the 405. And after he told us that, and I was like an E5 then, and there was another boatsmate that had been in the country before. We started going to Chow, and a couple of guys probably hadn't been in the military 6 months. About 3 of us just followed us right down. So we, the boatsmate stopped to say, guys, look, we just had a doctor on not going down the street like that, because we all got on the tigs. I mean, you stand out like a sore thumb, plus we tall.
So you were being really nice. You said, now, why don't you guys, I would have said, you need to get out of my hip pocket, buddy.
So they went back. We waited a few minutes. We started down the street again. We got about a half a block. Go, boom! It was, I mean, one of the the Vietnamese on
Petty
PC
caps?
on those little cycles, carried a little, look like school things.
Satchel jars.
And had just tossed one. And those same two kids got this, I mean, the biggest piece I've seen was a bicycle seat and just skin just smoking off a concertina wire. You know, so then, I mean, I can't stand in line long in the store. And I ended up standing the maybe 27 years. I mean, I did 4 tours a mile, and my last one was in country. Like George, I was a friend captain on that force for my first 3 years. Something else I'm going to share, so I'll shut up. But after I saw the, you know, we were dropping napalm and 500,000, 2,000 pound bombs on these, you know, 12 hours of using between, you know, and then after I went in country, and this is up in the name where, you know what I'm talking about, George. It was, been a friend of mine got caught out. It was at night, rainy, flares went off. We started getting fired at. So we went to this hospital, at the Maltese Cross, a German hospital, that no, they couldn't supposed to take any Americans or Vietnamese soldiers of any type. But we got in there because we was getting fired at. We wasn't leaving. But the next when daylight come, we seen probably 80 kids. That's all they took care of, kids. And some of them had been hit by American napalm. You know, seen some. I mean, it's like that. Napalm gets you. A tendency to rub it, and it just spreads. You know, and seeing those kids like that. This is around Thanksgiving. I'm sure I told Faye about this. And my kid was about 5 years old, and the kid in the hospital. I'm a Asian kid. I'm pretty sure because he's out of Cambodia. And the kid started trying to keep reaching for me. You know, man, that was. That stuck with me in my mind more than, you know, when I was in the Delta getting on the PBRs down there, getting fired at or anything else. Because seeing, I know we had, for 3 years, or 3 different, you know, 3 cruises, we had been dropping napalm. You know, and I couldn't see the reaction of it there because I'm on the carryout, you know, off the coast. Yeah. But then when I went in the country and saw the effects of that, that's when I got the guilt. Yeah. You know? Yeah. That's when I, you know, it's, yeah. And so I can understand, really relate to George when he's talking about the 2 girls there that, you know, they're for him. And I just want to say that.
Avoidance of activities that arouse memories of traumas or the war zone. Watching movies, going to places that might arouse memories. They don't have to be places like, oh, like a military surplus store or something like that. That's situational. It's Disneyland. It's the mall. It's going for Asian food, dim sum in Chinatown. It's a, yeah, it could be anything like that. Standing in line.
The smell of diesel fuel, the smell of gunpowder, the smell of urine.
Yeah.
There's just a whole variety of things that can trigger the veteran to go places they don't want to go. And the reality, I mean, for a long time I struggled with issues and trying to deal with Vietnam. And the unfortunate aspect of post-traumatic stress is you got to get a whole lot worse before you get any better. And as I started dealing with Vietnam and my issues there, I started having flashbacks. I started having nightmares. And it was like, what is going on? Because I'd talked to veterans who talked about flashbacks, and you know, I'm thinking, you're crazy. You know, how does that happen? And you know, I was at the beach, my favorite place, with my wife, and all of a sudden the place started to get unsecured, and immediately I was back on the beach in Vietnam. And fortunately I was at a place where my wife had understood what was going on, and she was able to talk me back and say, hey, we're in Santa Monica, 2000 and whatever, you know. But that's the reality. Those are issues that happen because of the experience that we had, that you need to understand so that hopefully you can help them deal with those issues. And you know, the problem is the veteran. They have to come to that point where they realize, you know, I got to the point where I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I said, you know, I need to get better. You know, the thing that messed me up was my wife went to a 12-step program for adult children of alcoholics. And that straightened her life out. And once she changed, it shifted the symmetry that we had in our marriage. And I used to tell her how, I used to say jump, and she wouldn't even ask how high, she would just jump. And all of a sudden I said jump, and she said no. What? What do you mean no? You know, and I mean, she forced me into counseling, and you know, I went to counseling with the attitude that, well, all I need to know is how she changed so I can control her again. And fortunately, we had a pretty wise counselor, and he said, no, you got to deal with your issues. You know,
we're talking about the re-experiencing component here. So there's something that goes. A flashback would be something that where there's a dissociative part of it, like they feel like they're back there, they smell things, they hear things. It's as though they're there. There's intrusive thoughts. That's the thing that thoughts used to pop into my head a lot, and or nightmares. So an intrusive thought can happen at any time. It interrupts your daily life, your interactions with other people. Nightmares, obviously, upon sleeping, whenever you can get sleep. You might. Audie Murphy, most decorated guy in World War II, had a recurring nightmare of being on a hill and being attacked by German soldiers, and every time he fired his weapon, a piece would fall off until he was holding the trigger guard. He had that dream every night, and he was holding the piece that would go around the trigger, and this was a recurring nightmare. So it's those valiant, brave, courageous people that have experienced some pretty heavy-duty trauma, and so it's existed for a long time, this stuff. They called it soldier's heart, in the Civil War they called it shell shock, in World War I battle fatigue, in World War II combat fatigue, and now
crazy
PTS,
in Vietnam.
Crazy, yeah, just plain nuts. But yeah, there's that re-experiencing piece that that is so common to the idea of post-traumatic stress. But it can occur in flashbacks or dreams or intrusive thoughts.
What do you do in this situation, or is there an organization that can help my daughter-in-law? My son is scheduled to go to Vietnam, to Iraq by December.
Oh.
But every time my son mentions that he's going or something, she like starts an argument, or she just, you know, goes into this rage thing, because I'm seeing a lot of the symptoms in her that you're mentioning. Is there any organization that can help her, or she can go to get, you know, to understand why he's going to go? He just re-enlisted for 5 years.
Well, I would think like, how about Blue Star mothers being able to do something like that, to provide that kind of support. You guys are learning, you've got the idea, there's something going on. When Johnny or Janie come marching home, they're not coming back the same people. Something's happening. There's distress related to this whole thing.
Yeah, because he was in...
I see that hand. Yes, sir. I don't know. Is that Navy rank? I salute. Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Answer to your question, ma'am. I'm in the Navy 8 years now. As a matter of fact, Thursday I go to Iraq. So, answer to your question though is the military will provide you, anybody that has a relationship with a son, a daughter, a wife, somebody, the programs. They have classes. They do.
Great.
Your sons and daughters, husbands, wives that are coming back will have classes just like this before they're even allowed to come home. They'll have classes in Iraq. They'll have classes. I go through classes before even going over there. You know, because we understand that mom, son, daughter, whatever, they've been out here for a year now, and they do stuff their way. All of a sudden, mom and everybody comes back, and they want to get back into the groove of things, but it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
So we have to go through those classes as well.
Yeah, because my son was in Korea for a year, and he came back, and she like changed,
She had everything
and now
that she wants.
she knows that he's going to Iraq, and she's changed again, and her,
Right.
I can see all the anxieties and
Sure.
things happening right now with her.
Where's she at?
They're at Fort Irwin.
Fort Irwin?
Mm-hmm.
She can walk right under Fort Irwin, and they got command career counselors sitting right there. They have pamphlets, everything like that table has right there.
Mm-hmm.
She can get counseling on the spot. She
Oh,
can,
good.
whenever she wants. They have classes, they have calendars
Great.
set up to tell you exactly
To
what
help
day,
her
what
to
class.
understand why he's going, or
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Or why he's going, how she can prepare herself.
Good deal. Excellent. Excellent.
Thank
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you know, and that is a big issue too. The readjustment back into family life. You know, they've spent however many months they have living with a bunch of grungy grunts, and you know, they develop habits that grungy grunts have that aren't really conducive to family life, and learning to blend the family back together. Alyssa knows, well, you probably all know about the Project Soldiers Project, whatever that. It's either Soldiers Project or Project Soldier. I keep getting messed up. But they provide free counseling for OIF, OEF veterans and their families for as long as it takes. You know, they're a resource. They're going to be at our stand down, which we're going to have at Grace Chapel on the 28th. There's a flyer up there about that.
We're also ordering some of their books, so we'll have some books.
But information is invaluable. Knowing, understanding. You know, you may not be able to talk to your son because he's not ready to talk about it now, but at least you have the knowledge of what to talk to him about, how to approach it, suggestions for where he might go for help, or to hook him up with his other Marine buddies, and just a bunch of guys sitting around. The problem with, I know some well, young Marines are just liking to go out and get drunk and a few other things, but that's that's the reality of it, and unfortunately, that's part of the process, but in my mind, by you folks being more informed as to what to look for, how to respond to different things, you can help them and guide them. Mom's got that way, your wife can tell you to do it and you go crazy, and your mom tells you to do it and you go do it. So yeah, you guys are valuable to their coming back into society. And again, unfortunately, post-traumatic stress, it's part of their life. What they experienced in combat will never leave them. For years I tried to get rid of those memories, get rid of those thoughts, and now I realize that God's using them to allow me to help others. But the reality is they're never going away.
So hers is like a pre-traumatic stress, which is the way my daughter-in-law reacts. It's like a pre-traumatic, right?
It's a recurring.
She's scaring herself to death.
Yeah.
That's a defense mechanism too, is to get that frightened before you go off, so that you have that rampart of disassociation when they're gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing to do, and I mean it's difficult, you have to try to be gentle and firm and have them not be enthralled by fear, because that fear is a serpent, and it is a truly paralyzing thing. But I think friends who are going through the experience at the same time can help one another, and that's why it's important
Support.
not to be isolated.
Support.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, isolation is the worst. Even, it's not something I'm recommending, but even going out with his buddies and getting drunk is part of the process. We talk about, the World War II vets, kind of stand-alone type of thing, but the reality of their situation was they finished their tour of duty, they got on troop ships and spent a month coming back to the States. And during that month, they were sitting around with the guys that they had just fought with, talking about their experiencing and debriefing each other. For the Jet Age folks, we were in the jungles of Vietnam one day, and 24 hours later on the streets of Los Angeles being spit on. At least our guys now are coming home to congratulations and welcome home celebrations. But the reality is
that know.
The reality is 6 months down the street, they're almost in the same situation. I've talked to a number of Gulf War vets who came home to the parades that the Vietnam veterans needed, you know, and all of this hoopla. And 6 months after those parades were over, these guys were on the streets, getting, you know, struggling to get their VA benefits, having problems, and nobody was paying attention to them because that was, you know, off the radar for the general population. That's the reality of the way we are. But it doesn't help the veteran. And the veteran needs to know that there are places like Point Man, like the VA, where they can get help. You know, VA may really frustrate you before they will help you, but they will help you.
There.
You know? And we've got guys like Dorian Frank who have helped us, you know, maneuver the bureaucracy of the VA. You know, and so we're trying to establish a vet center for the Antelope Valley where a veteran can come and sit across the table from another veteran and have him say, okay, this is the form you need to fill out, and this is how you fill it out, and do you need to get down to LA? Well, we'll take you down there and we'll show you the ropes. Rather than go to West Los Angeles, they'll take care of you.
Right.
Before you get halfway through it, you're crazy. You know, get me out of here.
Yeah, we're playing the big guessing game because Eric and I are finding that out now. And then all of a sudden he's supposed to have a head scan, and they call a half an hour before his appointment. A half an hour before his appointment because, oh, I see you're in Palmville. You can make it.
Yeah.
If we had a helicopter.
Frustration.
I didn't mean to open up that.
Yeah.
The VA is your friend.
Excuse me?
Sir?
The VA is...
Like I said, I didn't mean to open up that bag. Okay, from now on, the VA is off limits.
Now, like you said, Civil War, they call it Soldiers Hard. And What made the medical profession realize that we weren't a bunch of stupid, crazy, freaked out idiots?
My opinion?
Yeah.
2.5 million Vietnam veterans.
They didn't even recognize. In other words, when I got out, I went from 62 to 69 because I was in Special Forces. We didn't rotate. I didn't know what a round eye was. I got back on crutches, come through San Francisco, and I still don't know to this day, you know those people that used to wear long blonde hair and those white robes and stuff? Came up to me, and I'm on crutches, and spit at me. And yes, I reacted. Inappropriately, according to San Francisco Transit Authority. But to this day, I don't know if it was a female or a male or whatever. But in other words, all I saw was a threat, and...
But to get back to your original question, what I think caused the medical profession, the psychiatric profession, to turn around and start deciding they wanted to name this thing was 2.5 million Vietnam veterans saying there's something wrong with me and I'm not crazy. Just like the Gulf War veterans had to keep harping on the Gulf War syndrome before the medical professions finally said, well, yeah, maybe there is something there. And that's the reality. That's part of why it's important for veterans to support veterans. You know, we, the Vietnam veterans who are taking up the mantle of the World War II and Korean veterans, need to stand up and say, we're not going to let these guys come back to the crap we came back to. We're not going to let these guys have to struggle with post-traumatic stress for 35 or 40 years when there's ways that we can help them deal with it today.
That's right.
You know, maybe it'll take 6 months to a year.
There was nothing wrong with me.
Well,
I was just...
Yep.
So, you know, that I don't want to get on my soapbox, but
Yeah.
other questions?
In going through all these symptoms, as a mom or a father or a uncle or aunt or whatever, how do you know that you're triggering something, or how do you know an event is being triggered, that you could help them and walk them through this?
Well, that's something that's learned by experience, trial and error. Let's take my son to the happiest place on earth. Thanks for playing. Not a good idea. You know. So you learn about stuff, and maybe through the books you can get some of the subtle nuance, like let's avoid crowds, let's not get stuck in traffic somewhere, let's play it low key, let's to try to eliminate some of the things just by being aware of what a circumstance could turn into.
Well, one of the things that the other lady mentioned is so true, you know, my son will talk to his dad, to his uncle, and it's a macho thing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we did this, we did that, and it's cool, and it's, you know, he'll share that.
Yeah.
But I raised my son to have emotions and feelings and caring, and now he's gone.
Oh, and I'll tell, yes. Yeah, lots of feeling there, huh? I mean, yeah, and he came home, and I wasn't able to make that kind of difference that I wanted to make. And I never talked about Vietnam, about the feelings of it, till 2002. It was all anecdotal. It don't mean nothing. It was war stories. It was funny stuff. How much I drank, how much I smoked, all of that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until 2002 with George that I talked about the pain of loss, that I had lost friends, and it made me sad, not just angry.
The only thing he shared with me at this point that really is, he's going back again, and he's a staff sergeant, and he has men in his command that it's real hard for him.
Yeah.
And I can't help.
Yeah. And the reality that if you don't know it, you know, I don't want to surprise you, but your son, your daughter, is not coming home. It is going to be a totally different. I spent 30 years looking for something that I had left in Vietnam. And when I got back there in 1998, I found out that what I was looking for was my innocence, my youth, and it wasn't there. So your children aren't going to come back the same person. Yes, sir.
We're told, we're trained that we know our moms and our dads and our families are stressed out enough just because we know we're gone.
Yeah.
Why do we want to tell you so much about all this stuff that you already see on CNN? You know, we don't really want to be too macho to mom because we know how moms can get. You know, my dad, he can hide those feelings. You know he probably has them. But I can be nice and macho to my dad. Okay, those videos that you guys are talking about, I have some. I have them on my laptop. I've seen them. It touches me, you know. I know if I can get emotional and I kind of get worried about it, I'm not going to show mom.
But I see my son, when he goes overseas, he's been over there a number of times. I'll say, where are you going, Anthony? He goes, I'm not going to tell you, Mom. I don't want you to know. I don't want you to worry. I worry. I was the mom that raised my kids when we went on roller coaster. Okay, Anthony, this is what's going to happen. This is what's coming next. This is to prepare them. To not know where he is, to not know, is more devastating to me than to know. Because every time there's something on the news, every time I read a newspaper, I sit and I think, am I going to get that phone call that it's my son?
You wonder. You wonder.
By
You know
knowing
what?
he's
Your
not
own
there in
your
that
own
area,
sailors,
I know.
Your own soldiers, we even wonder where we're going, what we're doing. I'm flying to Kuwait. That's my first stop. How I'm getting to Iraq, I'm going to go work the prisons. We have 15,000 prisoners right now at the place I'm going to. How I'm getting there? Either Kilo, more than likely it's going to be a convoy. They have a lot of gear going with me, that's how I'm getting there. Now, sometimes we don't know. And we're taught, we're trained, you know what, tough. I forget what the exact term for, but we're not supposed to be telling all the information of where we're going, what we're doing.
Yeah.
Operations. Because a lot of times we don't even know. We won't know until we get our boots on ground and I can say, you know what, this is where I'm at. I'm lucky enough right now that For now, I know I'm going to this base to go do this detainee prison stuff. But when I get there, I'll tell you what, I just now, on Easter Sunday, on Easter, I flew in from almost 3 months of training in Texas through the Army. I had about 5 days worth of prisoner training. The rest of those 3 months were convoy training, i.e. everything. Because I'm going to Iraq. Who knows what can happen? They train us to the fullest. So that is something that why we might not tell you, because some parts we might know, but everything's supposed to change. So that's why, you know, and we're taught, you know what, don't be telling everybody everything that you're going to do.
Yeah.
Because we might not know. And I would also hate to be like, hey, this is where I'm going. You know, I can tell my mom right now, this is where I'm going. But I can get over there and like, you know what, I'm not going to be there. I don't know where I'm going. September 11th, prime example. As soon as that happened, I'm leaving. That's all I said. I had not a clue where I was going. I got on the ship, and out I went. 2.5 weeks, I patrolled the Hawaiian Islands. That's where I was stationed, was in Hawaii. And I sat there for 2 weeks. She didn't know. I couldn't get in touch with her. You know, we had the alarms go off and said, pick up the anchor line, and we're out here. And I got just enough time to run over the phone, like, hey, I'm leaving. I don't know where I'm going. I'll let you know as soon as I can.
That's called operational security.
There you go. That's all.
Secret.
Operational security. The less information we're able to give, the safer we are.
Yeah. And there's the code. There's, you don't go telling war stories. You don't want to go upsetting your mom. You don't want the protagonist in All Quiet on the Western Front. He comes back from that war, talks to his mother. What's his name? Chris or something?
Very
like
nice, Eric.
Yeah,
Very
and,
nice.
yeah. And Eric Maria Remarque's book is this remarkable book, and his mother says, "Well, what's it like at the front?" And he says, "Well, it's not so bad. It's not so bad. You know, it's kind of nice. It's not so bad." And I think, yeah, that's what they're supposed to do, what we're supposed to do, and so you want to make sure that you insulate those. And so now you want to maintain that intimacy that you have with your loved ones. And so now that needs to be changed somewhat. You know, once they learn that you're able to contain it, you know, it's not like, not that, you know, they'll start talking to you, and if they see that look in your face that says, uh-oh, where are we going here? Then they'll stop, they'll back off, and that's the end of that story, yes.
A couple things. My son's been to Iraq one time already, and he's going to be going back. And right now he's doing the live war games and stuff. And it's kind of weird, but in a sense, it's comforting to know they give such advanced training.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Army or the Navy, they don't want your kid to go over there and die either. They try and prepare him the best they can.
Yeah.
That, you know, you pray a lot. And I belong to Blue Star Moms group, and, you know, we offer each other emotional support. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they offer as much training as they can give and make it as realistic as they can to prepare you so that you're not so green and that you do come back. My son came back okay. I mean, post-traumatic stress and all that, but you know, he came back.
Oh,
you know,
sure.
He didn't die over there. He didn't get wounded over there,
Yeah.
and he came back. You know, and good training. You know, and so it's comforting to know that too. My son, these other mothers, you know, they might tell the gory stories. My son says nothing about nothing, and I noticed when he came back and stuff, and my parents had visited, and I just, because you know your kids, you know what I'm saying, and I was sensitive enough to kind of see certain, even just bodily movements or nonverbal stuff, you know, where I could just see his eyes start darting or getting kind of tense or, you know, that kind of thing. And then my parents, you know, my father's kind of was a little insensitive and started asking him questions. And I'm saying, Dad, he doesn't want to talk about it in front of my son. Dad, I mean, because my son started acting like a caged animal. He didn't want to, you know, and it's like, Dad, let's not talk about it. And my son seemed okay about it. I've told my son I'm willing to listen, but he doesn't want to tell me, you know what I'm saying? But I told him, I said, as long as you talk to somebody, you know, and he's in New York right now, but as long as you talk to somebody. But, you know, as far as knowing any signs or anything, you know your child. You'll be able to pick up on little things. You know what I'm saying? You'll be able to tell when something's not quite right or you're acting a little off. You know what I'm saying?
I don't have the listing with me, and I didn't even think about bringing it, but Point Man International has outposts in about 180 cities around the United States. We even got outposts in 6 foreign countries, 1 in Vietnam. And they are resources like our group where, you know, if you can find out where your son's at, go on the web, type in Point Man International, their website will pop up, and they list every outpost there with phone numbers, email addresses, the whole bit. You know, maybe point them in that direction.
Well, I have another question, because he's getting ready to go back over. So it's like, as far as pushing for someone to start working through something, and then to go back over, it's kind of difficult, isn't it, to open yourself up to be vulnerable when you know you're going to go back over.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Isn't it kind of almost, not really better, I mean, to be supportive, but to really work on all that stuff once they get back, they're going to be here a while.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
that's the tough tightrope that we have to walk, because during Vietnam, unless you were a career military guy or crazy and volunteered to go back, once you did one tour in Vietnam, you were out of the military completely.
More than one.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I mean, we had that little thing called the draft, so there was a steady flow of bodies to send over there. But because the military realized that they didn't want to handle these guys once they came, especially once they came back from combat. So I mean, I know guys that got out with 9, 12, 15 months left to do in their normal hitch, and they just riffed them out of the service because they didn't want to deal with them. You know, so if we didn't know then what we know now, it would have been a lot easier on those guys. But yeah, in your case, it's you don't want I don't want a combatant to get touchy-feely, because as soon as he starts thinking he's dead or his men are dead, that's the reality.
That's what I figured. I mean,
You have to leave them in combat mode until they're done. It's the same.
It-
My son informed me that he's going back, so it's like, okay, yeah, it's probably better that he doesn't deal with anything until he's actually done.
But see, but what's good is that you know what's going on, you know what the differences are. It's not shocking to you. You're not, you're dealing with the issue of not, of them not being your little kid anymore, that there's something different about them. There's a certain lethality. There's a certain knowledge that goes with being a warrior. Some people have the privilege of saying, you know, you really don't know what you might do in that situation. Well, they know. They've done it. And so with that knowledge comes a tremendous responsibility. And that self-knowledge leads to all kinds of transformation in a person's heart and mind. And it's a profound thing that they go through. But to know that they're supported is a good thing. And with Blue Star moms, I mean, that's a wonderful thing. I said early on that in looking at the progression of how something like post-traumatic stress, if that's what they have, PTSD, it's found that those who have a supportive family unit, where people are there that care for them and love them, they do better. They do better with their combat stress. They readjust better, and as opposed to those who don't. They don't readjust as well because they don't have that support system. I had a friend that I met in Washington, D.C. He was a helicopter pilot, and he told his parents he was a dust-off pilot, a medevac pilot. Those of you associated with the military, you know what that would mean. He told his parents that he shuttled patients from one location to another. He didn't talk about lifting the floor plates out and using a fire hose to clean out the helicopter every day. He sat down at the table one time and he thought he'd talk to his dad. He was talking something about going on a mission, and his dad says, "Oh, wait a minute. He wants to share the glory with the rest of us here." And so last time he talked to Dad about anything, that's it, end of story. You know what I mean? There wasn't that support.
About what we went through and what we had to do.
Yeah.
There's no glory in
Well, I was saying that,
men,
yeah.
women, children, and other
Yeah.
assorted items. Sorry.
Yeah.
Mike, you had a comment?
It's an interesting thing about when a guy wants to go back, and it's not that he wants to go back and get into combat or get into fighting, but his buddies are over there,
Yeah.
and he left them.
Yeah.
and he's got to get over there and support him. His mission isn't over.
Oh, you're right.
And that's the problem I'm having right now. Every time I see a 101st Airborne patch on a guy, I want to be there. I'm 60 years old, you know?
Yeah.
It's just what you brought up with. My buddies were still over there, and they left. So,
Yeah.
Well,
not that they want to leave home.
I volunteered to go to Iraq. I leave Thursday. I was gonna wonder why. My job is not here. I signed all my own. I knew what was going on, when was going on. My job is not here. The police guys that patrol your streets every day, that's their job. They take care of my family. While I go over there and take care of the country.
There you go.
I have to
Absolutely.
put all the trust into these guys that are on the streets. I'm a military police. That's what I do. That's what I do. So I was gonna wonder why. Just like you said, you want to go back over there. I have the opportunity. They asked if I wanted to go. It's my job. That's where I'm going. So if you guys kind of think about that, just remember that all your guys, they signed up, they wanted to, and it's their job. Everybody wants to pull us back over here and keep us safe and hug us and everything, but you know what? Right now, my job calls for me over there. So, I'm gonna go do my job.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Dorian.
I work for the Veterans Health Administration at West LA.
Now you know why I wanted to shut it down.
And I'm a veteran. I'm an Air Force veteran. We dropped bombs. 9 years Air Force. And one thing I want to thank you guys for this forum. I didn't come here to represent the VA, but I do.
You have a heart. You've been a big
I work with
heart.
homeless veterans.
You do.
In LA County, wherever they're, and it doesn't matter whether he's homeless or not. He's a veteran, he's a veteran. The one thing about PTS, veterans do recover. I've seen it. I'm on the front line. When they come into our building, I work at the Mental Health Outpatient Treatment Center. We assess and refer to all the clinics GLA-wide. We have psychiatrists, social workers. I'm a social science tech. It's basically a social worker without a degree, working on it. I've seen veterans come in disassociated, quiet. I can tell who's been to Iraq and who's been to Afghanistan. They come in, they're real quiet. They don't say anything. They sit by themselves, but they're sharp though. They understand what's going on. They just need some help. And it's veterans that work in the VA, it's employees that work at the VA that support them 110%. We give them the best service we can give them with what we have. And I know the VA has some cracks, but we give them the best that we have for them. You know, I've seen women come in there, talked about women. I've seen women come in there that have been over there. They've recovered. I took a girl out of here. She was homeless. She had a van, so I said, you want me to drive you down? She said, no, I'll drive down. I said, what time are you going to be down? She said, about 1 o'clock. I said, oh, that's too late. I said, you know, you need to be there about 8 o'clock in the morning. She said, no, I'm going to leave at 1 a.m. Because she was afraid to drive the freeway with all the traffic. Okay, that's when it hit me. You know, I was used to the males, but the females telling me that. So all I want to say is veterans do recover. She's doing fine now, as best as she could. The man that was talking about your issue, all I can say is at that time, they didn't know what was going on. You know, this is an education forum. You know, these guys, let me finish? Okay. These guys went through what you went through, but now they're educating the veterans coming after. See, Vietnam veterans are going to be the only veterans left. We're losing 1,500 World War II veterans a day. I think there's only 4 World War I veterans left. Okay? These guys are taking the time to educate the new veterans coming in. I work at the VA. I have veterans because I'm a veteran. A veteran is not going to get the short end of the stick when I'm on watch.
Amen.
Amen.
All right.
And that's what it takes. You know, education and support. That's the mothers and the families. I know you want to know a lot of things about what your sons and daughters are doing. Don't push them. Just support them. Just love them. They'll open up. They will. Right now, with the emotional things, the emotional symptoms that he talked about, those are all fear-based. You know, it's kind of like someone addicted to substances. That's my forte, okay? Because I was there too, okay? Fear. We suppress our emotions. And that allows our emotions to have power over us. But once we start taking back that power, we open up. We become that person that you knew before. Sure, I'm not going to be the same person I was when I went over there, but I'm that same child that you raised. I just have to get back to that point. So just educate, love your sons and daughters. You know, seek the help that's available. There's tons of information over there. I brought some information. There's tons of people that want to help you better. Seek those people out.
Amen.
Hey, thanks. Thank you.
Dennis had one comment, and then we're going to have to cut it off because we're after 9. So.
George, I just wanted to mention for anybody who might have seen or might not have seen a movie, and I'd recommend it from Blockbuster or Netflix or any of the way that we go and get these things. It's not a war movie about war, it's about war after the war. And it's called The Best Years of Our Lives.
Yeah, World War II.
Yeah, that's that black and white one.
And it's about coming home. And those guys had a load just like everybody else. And but for the moms and the wives, it is really a film about the men coming home and who they were after. There was a wonderful actor who lost both arms that got the special Oscar and the supporting Oscar. But everybody had a load to carry in that thing, and including them.
Was in there, I've seen it over and over. I can't take my eyes off of it like that.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's helpful too.
It is very helpful.
With that, I hope this was informative. I hope this gave you some insights. Like I said, there's tons of literature over there. Take what you want. We've got the downrange books. Point Man, and my cards are there. I'm available to answer questions, to talk, whatever. I'm honored to be able to do this because I realize how important it is for your sons and daughters to have to put up with the things that we put up with. So if you don't mind, I'd like to close in a word of prayer.
Absolutely.
What's your name? Brian. Okay. Anyway, let me close in a word of prayer, and then you don't have to leave here, or you don't have to go home, but you got to leave here. Heavenly Father, thank you for tonight. Father, I pray that our words were informative. We calmed some hearts and settled some questions. Father, I pray for our troops around the world, Father, especially those in harm's way. Father, give a special prayer for Brian and his trek out, and all of these young men and women who are coming and going in unknown situations.